I never thought I'd find myself in a situation where my sense of trust would shatter so completely. It started with what seemed like a normal day, but that day turned into something I'd never forget, something that's haunted me every time I close my eyes. My wife Lisa and I had been together for 8 years. We got married young, built a life, had plans. I always believed she was loyal, faithful, someone I could count on. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but it was solid, or so I thought. The kind of trust you don't question until everything's torn apart. The day it happened was a Saturday. My grandmother's funeral was scheduled early in the morning, and I remember waking up with that heavy feeling in my chest, probably nerves, probably grief. I wasn't thinking about anything else. Lisa was still asleep, her arm draped lazily over my side. I kissed her forehead, the scent of her shampoo lingering, and got ready. The funeral home was crowded. Old friends, distant cousins, people I hadn't seen in years. I stood next to my mother, feeling numb as they lowered her casket. It was a somber day, heavy with grief. I kept stealing glances at Lisa, who seemed engaged in the service, tears in her eyes, but that's what I wanted, her to mourn with me, to share the moment. After the service, everyone headed to the reception. I was in a haze, trying to hold it together. That's when I noticed her. Or rather, I noticed what she was doing. Lisa was sitting in a corner, her phone pressed to her ear, whispering. Her head dipped low, and I saw her bite her lip. Her eyes flicked around nervously. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but the way she was acting, like she was hiding something, made my stomach tight. I decided to get closer. I slipped behind a tall flower arrangement, trying to stay out of sight. That's when I saw her hand sliding into her purse, fingers fumbling with something. My heart pounded. I couldn't see exactly what she was pulling out, but I caught a glimpse of a small, crumpled piece of paper, or maybe a note. My mind scrambled. Why would she need to hide that? Who was she talking to? My gut told me this wasn't just a call about some insignificant matter. The worst thought crossed my mind. Was she cheating on me? I waited silently, trying to decide what to do. Then she looked around her, checked her phone again, and slipped the note into her purse. She stood up abruptly, brushing past a group of people, and I noticed her cheeks were flushed, either from crying or lying. When she finally headed toward the restroom, I followed at a distance, heart pounding harder than ever. That's when I finally saw what she was hiding. She pulled out a lipstick, a compact mirror, and another note. This one was crumpled and stained with what looked like lipstick marks. My blood went cold. She was hiding evidence, evidence of what I didn't want to finish the thought. The moment she disappeared into the restroom, I paused outside the door. My palms were sweaty and my head was spinning with questions. What was she doing in there? Who was she talking to? And what was that note about? I had to know, even if the truth was going to destroy me. I didn't want to just confront her blindly. I needed proof, something concrete. So I slipped my phone out of my pocket and snapped a quick photo of the note. She'd hidden in her purse. The screen briefly lit up, showing me a series of words I'd never imagined I'd see from her. Meet me at the park at 8, don't tell him. My world collapsed in an instant. The betrayal was so blatant now, so undeniable. My legs felt heavy as I backed away, heart hammering. I couldn't breathe right. All I could think about was how everything I believed about her, about us, was a lie. I waited until she was out of sight, then slipped away myself. I needed to process this, to figure out what to do next. But one thing was clear: the trust was gone. The woman I loved, the woman I promised to spend my life with, was cheating on me right there at my grandmother's funeral. That's when I knew I had a choice. I could walk away, or I could burn it all down. And trust me, I was already starting to plan how I'd make her regret what she'd done. I spent the rest of that day trying to keep it together, but inside, I felt like I was unraveling. Everything I'd built with Lisa, the trust, the dreams, the quiet promises, crumbled in that moment. I kept replaying that note in my head. Meet me at the park at 8, don't tell him. Who was she meeting? Was it just some guy? Or was it someone she'd been sneaking around with for months? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the evidence was right there, staring me in the face. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. My stomach was tight, my palms sweaty. I kept thinking about how perfect everything seemed just a few hours ago. Now it all felt like a lie, like a sick joke I'd fallen for. I kept asking myself, what the hell am I supposed to do with this? How do I confront her? Do I do it now or wait until I have a solid plan? The next morning, I decided I needed to gather more proof, something that would hit her harder. I couldn't just accuse her without concrete evidence. That meant going back to that note and more, somehow finding out who she was meeting. I couldn't trust her anymore, but I could make her reveal herself. I had to. I started by spying her that day, watching her every move. She seemed anxious, avoiding eye contact, rushing through her chores. I noticed she kept glancing at her phone, hiding it every time I looked her way. The more I watched, the more I felt my anger boiling. She lied, she cheated, and she'd been doing it right under my nose. How could I have missed the signs? That night I came up with a plan. I knew I couldn't just confront her out of nowhere. That would make her defensive. I had to do it in a way that would make her spill the truth. I decided to leave a trail, a fake message from the guy she was meeting, that would force her to come clean or deny everything. I knew she'd be tempted to lie, to deny it all, but I was banking on her slipping up. So I crafted a message and left it on her phone, pretending it was from the guy at the park. "Hey, it's me. Looking forward to seeing you tonight. Don't forget the gift." I knew she would see it the next morning, and I wanted her to react, to slip up. The next day, I sat in the living room pretending to be normal, but inside I was tense. I watched her as she found the message. Her eyes widened and her cheeks flushed. She froze, then looked around nervously. "What's this?" I asked, voice calm but cold. She stammered, "I don't know what you're talking about." "Come on, Lisa, I've seen you sneaking around. I found the note in your purse and now this message. Who is he?" Her face turned pale. "You're paranoid. You're reading too much into things." I stepped closer. "No, I'm not. I saw you at the funeral whispering on the phone. I saw what you hid in your purse, so don't lie to me, just tell me the truth." Her lips trembled and she looked like she was about to crack. "It's nothing, just a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding? You're cheating on me. You're meeting some guy behind my back. What else am I supposed to believe?" My voice cracked, but I forced myself to stay steady. She finally looked down, tears in her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It's just, I was lonely and he was there. And I didn't think it'd go this far." That's when I saw the truth. The betrayal wasn't just about the note or the texts. It was deeper, more calculated. She'd been hiding it for months, I'm sure of it. All the late nights, the secretive phone calls, the sudden distance, everything made sense now. I knew I had to act. I wasn't going to let this slide. But I also wanted to teach her a lesson. If I was going to burn this bridge, I'd do it in a way she'd never forget. I'd make her regret everything she'd taken from me. And I'd do it without screaming or throwing things. I needed cold, calculated revenge. I told her to pack her things. I couldn't be around her anymore. I told her she'd lose everything if she kept lying. I wanted her to see that her choices had consequences. That's when I started to plan how I was going to end this, how I'd make her feel the pain she'd inflicted on me, without crossing into violence or cheap shots. But first I needed her to leave. I handed her a bag, told her to take her stuff, and told her she was no longer welcome in my house. As she packed, I felt a strange mix of anger and relief. The truth was out and I was finally taking control. That night I sat alone in the quiet house, feeling the weight of everything. The betrayal hit harder than I ever thought it would, but it also pushed me to take control. I didn't want to be a victim anymore. I knew what I had to do next, and I was ready. The game was on. The house felt emptier than ever after Lisa left. The silence was deafening, like I'd lost a part of myself. I sat on the couch, staring at the spot where she'd been just hours before, trying to process what had happened. My stomach was clenched tight and my palms still felt slick with sweat. Every breath I took was heavy, like trying to breathe through a thick fog of betrayal. I spent the following days obsessively going over everything. The secret meetings, the hidden notes, her nervous glances. It was one thing to suspect. It was another to have irrefutable proof. That night, I finally sat down and mapped out my revenge plan. I knew I was going to make her regret crossing me, but I wanted to do it in a way that left her powerless, humiliated maybe, but without crossing into violence or doing something I'd regret later. I started by setting a trap. It had to be subtle but effective. I'd already planted the seed of suspicion with the fake message. Now, I needed to escalate it to make her come back, to get her to reveal herself completely. I decided to pretend I was still clueless, acting as if I was ready to forgive and forget, just enough to lure her out of hiding. I created a fake email account, one that looked like it belonged to a guy named Chris. I made sure the email had a convincing profile picture, a generic name, and a few provocative messages that hinted at something more. I kept it casual, but enough to make her curious if she saw it. I linked it to the note I'd planted earlier and I wrote back saying, "Hey, I know what you did. We need to talk. Let's meet again somewhere private." The idea was simple. I wanted her to think she was getting another chance. Another opportunity to meet this Chris, to come clean. But in reality, I was planning to be there, watching her every move. I waited until the night before the supposed meeting, then sent her a message from my new account. "Everything's set. Come to the park at 8 tonight, it's just us. No one else needs to know." My stomach twisted as I hit send. I knew she'd bite. She was desperate to clear her conscience, to explain herself, or maybe to lie again. Whatever her reason, she'd show up and I'd be there waiting. As the clock approached 8, I parked my car a block away, hidden behind some trees. I kept my phone handy, ready to record if needed. The park was quiet, moonlight casting long shadows on the empty benches. I watched for movement, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Then I saw her. Lisa. She appeared from the shadows, walking briskly, clutching her purse. Her cheeks were flushed and her eyes darted around nervously. She looked around once, then approached the meeting spot. I kept still, watching her with cold eyes. When she finally saw me, her face froze. For a moment, she looked like she might run, but then she hesitated and stepped closer. I stepped out of my hiding spot, making sure she saw me. "What are you doing here?" I asked, voice low but firm. Her eyes widened. "I don't know what's going on. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." "Oh, I think you do," I said. "You thought you'd get away with it again, huh? Meeting someone behind my back. How stupid do you think I am?" She swallowed hard. "It's not what you think." "I was going to tell you." "Save it," I snapped. "I have the proof right here." I pulled out the phone, showing her the screenshots of the fake email and the messages I'd sent her. "You played me for a fool, Lisa. I was blind, but I see everything now." Her face crumpled. "Please, just listen. I didn't mean for it to get this far. I was just lost, and I didn't want to hurt you." I shook my head. "You already did. You betrayed me in the worst way. You think I'm just going to forgive you? That I'll forget all those lies? No, I've planned something better." "What are you talking about?" she asked, voice trembling. I took a step closer. "You want to lie, you want to keep sneaking around, fine. But I'm not going to let this slide. You're going to regret ever crossing me." She looked like she wanted to say more, but the fear in her eyes was unmistakable. I knew I'd pushed her to her limit. I'd made her realize I wasn't the fool she thought I was. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "Here, what's going to happen? You're going to leave town for a while. I want you to go somewhere far away where I can't find you. You're not coming back until I say so." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Instead, she just nodded, tears streaming down her face. I handed her the envelope. "This is your ticket out. When I say it's over, you can come back. Until then, stay away from me and from everything we had." She took it with trembling fingers and looked at me one last time. I saw the regret in her eyes, but also the fear. She knew I meant every word. I watched her walk away, her footsteps echoing in the quiet night, leaving me alone with the bitter taste of victory. This was just the beginning. I finally had the upper hand, and I wasn't letting go. She'd regret ever betraying me, and I'd make sure she remembered it every single day. The days that followed that night were a strange mixture of relief and anger. I'd executed my plan, and she was gone. The house was dead silent, except for the occasional creak of the old floorboards or the distant hum of traffic outside. I'd handed her the key to her departure. Literally, I put it in an envelope and handed it to her before she left, signaling the finality of it all. I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the door she just walked out of, feeling a strange weight lift but also a gnawing ache inside. The betrayal still hit me hard, but now I controlled the narrative. I knew she was far away, probably crying, probably regretting every stupid move she made. But I also knew I hadn't just lost her, I'd taken back my dignity. That night, I started planning my next move. The revenge I'd envisioned wasn't over yet. I wanted her to feel the full impact of what she'd done, and I wanted to make her regret ever crossing me in the first place. I knew I couldn't just disappear or forget about it. No, I had to ensure she'd always remember what she lost. I contacted an old friend of mine, someone I trusted who knew about my situation. We discussed the best way to make her regret her decision without crossing lines I'd regret later. It was about making her feel vulnerable, exposed, something to match how betrayed I'd felt. I decided on a simple but effective approach. I'd make sure she saw what I was doing, that she knew I was in control of everything. First step, I started by cleaning out the house. Not just physically, but emotionally. I threw away everything that reminded me of her, photos, gifts, even her favorite mug. I wanted to sever the ties completely. As I packed up her things, I felt a strange sense of liberation, like I was reclaiming my space and my life. Next, I created a new email account, one that looked like it belonged to a private investigator or some anonymous source. I knew I needed to make her paranoid, to make her think someone was watching her, listening, waiting. I drafted messages that hinted at her being under surveillance, all vague but enough to unsettle her. Things like, "I know what you did. You can't hide forever," or "We're watching you. You can't run from this." I sent her a series of these messages over the next few days. Each one made her more anxious, more paranoid. She started calling me, begging to know who was sending them, but I kept quiet. I wanted her to feel the pressure, to realize she wasn't free from her mistakes. I also sent her a photo, just an innocuous shot of a coffee cup with a note that read, "We're always watching." Meanwhile, I kept tabs on her social media, watching her reactions to what she thought were threats. I noticed her deleting her posts, avoiding pictures with friends, even changing her phone number. All signs she was trying to escape what she'd done, but I was still there, watching. One evening, I decided it was time to make her really feel the consequences. I hired someone to follow her, nothing threatening, just enough to keep her on edge. I wanted her to see that she wasn't safe, that her betrayal had real consequences. She'd been so cocky, so sure she could get away with it. Now she was trembling, unsure of who was watching her. That night, I sent her a final note from that anonymous account. It said, "You can run, you can hide, but you can't outrun what you did. Some secrets don't stay buried forever." I knew she'd get the message, that her time of peace was over. She'd be thinking about me every time she looked over her shoulder. I sat back and watched her reactions unfold, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and cold detachment. This wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake anymore. It was about making her understand that betrayal has a price. She'd lost everything: trust, stability, and now her peace of mind. That's when I realized I'd won. I'd taken control, and I was going to make sure she never forgot it. This wasn't just about tearing her down. It was about rebuilding myself stronger, knowing I could survive anything she threw at me. And I knew deep down that I'd never trust her again, not with my heart, not with my life. She'd burned that bridge, and I was going to watch it burn to ashes. The weeks rolled by, and I kept my distance from her. Every day I reinforced my control, knowing that her paranoia was growing. I could hear her pacing, sometimes late at night, her voice whispering on the phone, trying to convince herself she was safe. But I knew better. She was trembling inside, and that was exactly what I wanted. I made sure she saw me moving on, too. I started dating again, casually at first, small dinners, a few drinks, nothing serious. It was about sending her a message without saying a word. I'm not broken and I don't need her. I was rebuilding my life, and she was just a ghost in my rearview mirror. I wanted her to feel the pain of losing me, to see that she'd destroyed something real and valuable. One evening, I decided to give her a taste of what she'd lost. I sent her a picture, me with someone new, smiling, happy. No words, just the image of a fresh start. I knew she'd see it. I knew she'd get angry. I wanted her to realize she couldn't just erase me or control me anymore. That her betrayal had consequences, and I was finally moving on without her. But I didn't stop there. I arranged a final act, something that would cut deep, something that would make her second-guess every choice she'd made. I hired a private investigator to dig into her life a little more. I wanted to find out if she was still seeing that guy, if she was trying to hide anything else. I knew she was probably lying about everything, and I was determined to expose her. The PI came back with shocking news. She'd been meeting someone else, a guy who seemed even worse, more manipulative, more selfish. She'd been lying to herself, lying to him, lying to everyone. It was a web of deception, and I was the one who was pulling the strings. Now I knew her real pattern, and I could use it against her. I decided to send her a final message, one that would hit her where it hurt. I crafted a text, cold and precise. I know everything about the new guy. The lies, the secret meetings. You thought you could hide forever, but you can't. You betrayed me, and I've made sure everyone knows. Enjoy your new life because I'm done. The silence that followed was almost deafening. I knew she read it. I knew it crushed her. That's when I finally felt a strange sense of satisfaction, knowing she was unraveling just as I had. But I wasn't finished. I wanted her to see that she'd lost control entirely. So I arranged for her to find a letter I left at her new apartment. It was simple. A handwritten note telling her I'd been watching her from the start, that she couldn't run from her past, and that she'd pay for her betrayal. I left it where she'd be sure to see it, on her pillow, right next to her new bed. I watched her read it through her apartment window, saw her eyes widen in shock. That moment, her perfect new life crumbling in front of her, felt better than any revenge I'd planned. She'd been so confident, so smug, but now she was just a broken woman grasping at shadows. I finally started to piece my life back together, piece by piece. I knew I'd hurt her, I'd made her regret her choices, and I'd made sure she never forgot what she did. But the truth was, I'd also learned a lot about myself, about resilience, about holding onto dignity even after betrayal. Looking back, I realized revenge isn't about causing pain just to see someone suffer. It's about reclaiming your power, about making someone see what they've lost. Lisa's betrayal was a punch to the gut, but turning that into a calculated game of control. That's what truly set me free. I don't regret what I did because I didn't do it out of pure anger alone. I did it because I refused to let her walk all over me. And honestly, that realization made me stronger than I ever thought I could be. The final weeks were a blur of calculated moves and quiet reflection. I kept my eyes open for any signs she might have been trying to retaliate or undo what I'd done, but somehow she seemed defeated. Her social media posts had dried up, her calls to friends were infrequent, and her once confident stride had given way to a meek, cautious shuffle. Good. I made the last move I'd planned, handing over the keys to her new apartment, a symbolic gesture that she was officially cut loose. I walked to her doorstep, envelope in hand, and placed it on the doormat. Inside was a simple note: "You betrayed trust. You lost me. This is your final lesson." Then I set the keys on top, turned, and walked away. Nothing about this was petty or impulsive. It was precise, an endgame designed to leave her with nothing but the echoes of her choices. I didn't need to yell or scream. I knew she felt the weight of it all. I felt the weight of it too, but with a strange sense of relief. I'd reclaimed my dignity, my peace, and my future. As I watched her from afar one last time, I saw her pick up the envelope, eyes fixed on the note inside. She looked around, probably realizing the full scope of what she'd lost. That was the moment I felt the true victory, knowing she'd understand in her own way that you can't betray someone who's already moved on. I've learned that trust isn't something you can take for granted. When it's broken, the only way to heal is to take control, to fight back not with violence but with clarity. Revenge isn't about causing pain just to hurt. It's about redemption, regaining what's yours and making sure the other person feels the sting of their own mistakes. Now, I live with a clearer mind. I still get angry sometimes, but I channel that energy into bettering myself. The betrayal was a brutal lesson, but it taught me resilience and the power of standing tall. I realized that sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away, stronger and more aware than ever before. And so, I move forward, knowing I've done everything I could to reclaim my life, without bitterness, without regret. She might have thought she could destroy me, but in the end, I was the one who took back control. That's a lesson no one can ever take away. Trust is fragile, but self-respect is unbreakable.